What is going on, eaters and feeders? Bear with me while I adjust the scenery. Super professional, right? Hold on. Get myself a chair. I'm a little tired. It's been a long day. I wanted to talk about focusing. And this really applies to, not just entrepreneurs, but especially entrepreneurs. And the reason I'm thinking of it, and it's on the top of my head, is because, as many of you know, I do consulting. I do consulting mainly for meal prep companies, other food companies, other businesses that aren't even food companies. And I don't take on a lot of consulting clients. I love all the consulting companies the companies I work with. I hate calling them clients; they're more like friends. And I thoroughly enjoy speaking with them, talking to them about their troubles and their ideas. But I think one of them is it's the double-edged sword of the entrepreneurial optimism. As entrepreneurs, especially if you've had some success, you can't help but see opportunities all over the place, right? And I know that there are some people out there who probably feel like they're stuck in a job and they never come across an idea, or they have some really far-fetched ideas, and they might not even be something that's, I never want to say it's not realistic. I never want to say it's not executable, but it's not something that would be highly probable to be executed given their position. And then there's other situations where you'll have entrepreneurs who, especially entrepreneurs, I know this is, really for everybody, but especially entrepreneurs, where you see like, well, if I just did this, if I just added that, I could do this. And everything seems so easily executable and something that you can definitely do. And a lot of times I think it comes down to hubris. And we just have to be aware of it, because if you spread yourself too thin, and I'll give you some examples, but if you spread yourself too thin, you could end up risking what you're already doing, what you should already be focusing on. And not to say that you can't run multiple projects simultaneously, but there is only so much time in your day, in your week. There's only so much energy that you have. You only have so many resources. And as much as we all want to act like we're superheroes, and sometimes we feel like we've got this grind inside of us, and there's sometimes when you're in a flow state, you feel like you can just do what you're doing 24 hours. I've been there, and I felt like working made me happy. And when you're in a flow state, especially, it's almost like working gives you more energy and gives you more inspiration. You just want to not stop, and you just want to grind away at it. But not only is that not healthy, but it's not sustainable. There will be a point where that inspiration and that muse leaves you, and then you're left with a project that still needs your time and attention. So especially as a meal prep business, and I'll start off by throwing ourselves, I'll throw myself and my business partner under the bus. One of the examples of something thankfully we dodged was we were looking to open up another concept. If you guys have seen my other videos, I've given you opinions on retail. I think retail could make or break you, and a lot of people find retail appealing. By retail, I mean specifically with the meal prep model, having a retail spot, which is normally where you're paying a lot more rent, to benefit off of the organic exposure of the location, the foot traffic of the location. And it's also nice to, there's a little bit, and I'm being honest, going through it with, going through a potential distraction that we were getting into. There's a little bit of an ego tap, a little bit of petting the ego when you have something that people are able to walk by and they see. Fit Food Fresh, and I know some of you guys have meal prep businesses that are retail, and I'm not saying that's a bad idea, but so the way Fit Food Fresh is set up is we've got an industrial location. It's not at all retail. It's a shared use commercial. I think it's industrial. It's basically a warehouse it's 3 warehouses, technically 3 spaces that were like office and then warehouse in the back. And then two of those were combined and they made a kitchen. And then a third one was added on, and that's what we have as our warehouse. And it's just not a retail situation. So we were looking to get into a retail opportunity that we saw. And in Delray Beach, Florida, there is a downtown area called Atlantic Ave. And Atlantic Ave is kind of a hot spot. It's, as far as Palm Beach County, there's, which is the county that we're in, there's a couple of different areas where, you have that aggregate of people. You have the nightlife, you have the bars, you have the restaurants, you have all the other businesses that are already drawing the attention. But the problem with those downtown areas, those hot spots, is you're paying retail, which is a lot more expensive than the, per square foot price of the industrial, off the beaten path place that we have already. So we were looking at getting a small retail place, not for manufacturing. We were going to keep our manufacturing location, the bigger place that required a larger footprint. We are going to be keeping that. And we are going to be getting a retail space right off of Atlantic Avenue, like 2 blocks away from Atlantic, well within walking distance. We figured if we had these hours, we'd be able to capture some of the people who were, leaving the bars and whatever else. They'd be willing to, stop by and grab something. There's a lot of residential places. It made a lot of sense. There was a really hip coffee place slash they had beer, craft beer too, next door, and they did karaoke and had like a little bakery. And we had the right demographic in the area. Everyone in the area, it's expensive rent for residential and for the commercial. So we had the people with the money, and we're thinking, okay, we're going to have good foot traffic. We had the concept, we called it Fresh Box. And we were basically going to have refrigerators full of our meals from Fit Food Fresh, sell those, as well as other local products, other, healthy, organic juices. And we were going to have a juice bar and maybe like a little press or something like that, and a little counter. We had the space. Literally the day that we were signing the lease, I just had a change of feeling. And I told my business partner, we can't do this. We're not doing this. No, we're not doing it. So we ended up not signing the lease. Now, what I realized in that epiphany that I had driving to the office that day, and from the office, we were going to go together. We were really excited to sign the space. And we were so excited because it seemed like, especially compared to what we were doing, this would be an easily executable business. It's just a space with some refrigerators, a counter, put, some kind of college student behind the counter working the register, throw up some cameras to make sure, we're able to have transparency and be able to see what's going on when we're away. Seemed like a really easily executable, business for us to do. But what I realized is every minute that we'd be focusing on making sure that business was successful would be a minute that would be stolen away from our existing project. And the way I look at it, and this might not be the best way to look at it from a business standpoint, because I'm sure there's probably opportunities that I would have been able to make successful, but chose not to follow. But the way I look at it is we already had obligations to our existing employees, to our existing customers, to provide the best experience. And Fit Food Fresh at that point wasn't at a stage where it was on its own. So that would have been a huge distraction for us. Now, coincidentally, within 6 months, we saw that there was a business that literally a block closer to Atlantic opened up a cafe, juice bar, very similar concept. Similar enough to where that foot traffic that we would have been getting off of Atlantic would have gone right to those clients. They wouldn't have any reason to walk another block. They would have found the healthy food they were looking for right there. So that would have cut us off from that project. I see, some of and that was a story that I told to one of my, consulting clients I was working with today. And I'm not going to describe the idea that he was proposing. He's got many ideas, and they're great ideas. And with the right amount of bodies and money and resources, they're all executable. But every minute, every dollar, every ounce of energy that's put into those projects or those other ideas would be taken away from the existing project, which also still needs work. And I said, you've hired me, you're paying me, and I'm not cheap hourly. You're paying me a nice amount each hour to help you with this existing business, because you've recognized that this existing business needs that much help, that you need external help. And that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing to realize. It's good to get, an external perspective and to bring in a consultant, and really it probably isn't in my best interest as a consultant to tell him not to get into another venture, because that would just be another opportunity where I can charge consulting fees. But my job as a consultant, I don't want to sell my consulting services. Number one, I don't look at myself as a consultant. I do it and I charge for it to justify the time, because I'd love to spend time and talk to everybody about the business and help everybody on a one-on-one basis. But then my things wouldn't get, taken care of. So I charge a nice amount to make it worth my while. And that isn't my priority. So my priority is to be honest. And I was just like, listen, you're already putting a lot of money into paying me to help you with this. And now you want to divert your attention and your resources into something else. And while it's a great idea, and while it does make sense because it's kind of just outside your wheelhouse, it is still outside of your wheelhouse. And your wheelhouse, I don't want to say it's in shambles, but it's not standing on its own. It's still requiring you as a business owner to be part of the machine. You're not a business owner. And I don't want anybody to take offense to this, but according to Robert Kiyosaki, who's way smarter than me, I don't know if he's smarter than you, but Robert Kiyosaki's a pretty smart dude. Check out cash flow quadrants. I've got a cash flow quadrant. I've got another video, at least 1 or 2 videos on cash flow quadrant. Very short and simple book. But the slap in the face is, you're not a business owner if you are still working for your business. Okay? You are an employee of your business if you're still working for your business. If it's necessary for you to show up and put time and energy and maybe even still money into your business, but even if you're just showing up to, be the CEO, be the president, work on sales, or just show up to manage people, if it's requiring your time still, you're an employee of your business. You're not a business owner. Once you're a business owner, and that's almost like on the level of being an investor, where you're sitting back, you're not involved with the day-to-day, maybe you make some decisions, you're almost like a board member where you have a broad scope of things, but there's other people who are managing things. And really the way a definitive question that I would ask if someone was like, I don't know if I'm a business owner yet, if you were to slip into a coma for a year, would your business, when you wake up, would your business be bigger? Would it still exist? Would it be the same? If it's the same or bigger, maybe you're a business owner. Maybe you've got a system that's in place and enough people and policies and procedures and everything else. Maybe you have that all built out and you can break even. Then I would say, okay, you can call it a business owner. If it grew without you, of course you're a business owner. That's bravo. Great idea. But if it's still very dependent upon you, sad news is you're not a business owner. You need to focus on getting that across the finish line, getting that to a point where you can sit back. And then at that point, when it's not requiring your focus, then by all means, focus on the next project. But I think, as I was saying before, a lot of entrepreneurs, we have this optimism, we have this confidence in ourselves. People who have never had a business before, they've never had success, they've never maybe even failures. Some business owners have confidence by going through failures, and they realize like, wow, I'm still here. I'm still alive. That didn't hurt. I can get back up and try again. There's a confidence in that's built in failures as well. But there's, people who they're still employees. They don't have that optimism. They don't have that, oh, I can just go out and do this. And it's almost dangerous when you do get that and you do have that confidence, because a lot of things seem easy. And a lot of times, like I said, we have that hubris, where we have hubris in the way that I'm using it is, if you're not familiar with the word, it's basically an unfounded amount of confidence. It's like you have confidence for no logical reason of being confident. So you might have that, and it maybe isn't even the appropriate way to be using it, because you might have some great reasons to be confident, but with hubris, we're kind of blinded to some of the things that maybe we don't want to see, maybe the ways it can go wrong, the shortcomings that we have, our limit of resources, our limit of bandwidth, the things that we're not taking into account that are going to make what seems very easy actually very difficult. If you're looking at starting another vertical, another business, another brand, that's going to be its own thing with its own needs, and it's going to need, if you're going to build it out to be a real thing, like for instance, I'll use this example because I don't know what else you guys are chewing on. That fresh box location, that little retail spot, that would have been everything from its own logos to its own, attorney paperwork, its own social media, its own website, its own marketing. And while we could truncate a lot of things and leverage a lot of things that we already had in place, relationships that we already had in place, and especially the fact that we were already manufacturing one of the primary products that we were going to be selling from it, there are a lot of reasons that make it enticing to give it a try. But taking that focus away from the main project that is dependent upon you could be to its detriment. And I've seen a lot of, in restaurants especially, down here in South Florida, restaurants, and I'm sure this is like a lot of major, cities, not that Florida is a major city, but a lot of MSAs, major statistical areas. Big areas have a tendency to flip through restaurant concepts very quickly. So I've seen other restaurateurs who have some success with some projects, and then they take that concept and they try to replicate it too fast. They don't have the right system in place. They don't have the right people. They underestimated the difference in, one county's clientele versus another county's clientele. They relied too much on, they got really lucky in the location that they had in the first place. They weren't able to replicate that exact same kind of location and get that same kind of clientele in the foot traffic that's native to the next place they're going, whatever the variable is. There's a lot of things that they don't account for. And they're just like, well, I was successful here, so why wouldn't I be successful at the next thing? And not to say you won't, but I've seen, especially in the food business, with the margins being so thin and with restaurants, I've seen restaurants go from being very successful to growing very fast, maybe a couple of different concepts in this little restaurant portfolio. And then all of a sudden, they've gone from 8 locations or 8 different concepts with 8 different restaurants going on to one of them went from 8 to 3. So they had to retract, they had to get small. And as a business owner, as I said before, I think about the employees that I already have an obligation to. Once you have 8 locations, like in this example, I'm not going to name any names, and then you have to go down to 3, contracting like that means a lot of people lose their job. And it's because maybe your reach it surpassed your grasp, or your grasp surpassed your reach, whatever the analogy is. Neither side makes sense, so I don't know which way to go with. But your lack of focus led you to extend yourself a bit beyond what you should have been extending yourself. So you've got to look from time to time at what your endeavors are, what's on your to-do list, what are those things you're chewing on. And if it's something that you have to be real with yourself, if it's going to take energy, time, resources, money, whatever you want to call it, away from your existing project, and it's not going to be something that's absolutely crucial, you should probably table it. We have, as I was mentioning before, some people have an abundance of ideas. You're going to have another idea in 6 months. That's going to be a gold mine. You're going to have another idea in 3 years. That's going to be the gold mine. You can't pursue every good idea that you have. You should have a plethora of good ideas. If you were to try to run down everyone, I remember when I was younger, in my younger days, I should say, and I can't tell you how many domains I've bought, because I'd be up late at night and I'd get some kind of idea and I'd start running with it, and I'd start looking at the competition like, oh, nobody's doing this, and here's a great little niche to get in, and let me start getting the domains. And I'd buy a bunch of domains and kind of be in this like manic state where it's like anything's possible. This is going to be the next thing. This is going to explode. And and then, I mean, I look at them now, I get reminders for domains, how every year it'll give you a reminder. It's like, I totally forgot about that concept. I was really hyped on that for like a week. And then I get distracted with reality. And like I said, it comes down to, especially as a business owner, the responsibility that you have to your people, the responsibility to, like, I don't know if you've maybe taken loans from, your friends and family, or maybe, like I said, just having employees. You owe it to them to provide a stable environment and a company that hopefully is growing and is able to reward them for their effort consistently and able to offer more opportunities to them. And while it looks tempting, especially when you might be in a situation where you're struggling with a concept, you're struggling with a business, and you can't get it to grow, you're hitting a glass ceiling, and for some reason, it's just not performing the way you want. Sometimes it's enticing to be like, oh, well, I could just open up a little one of these, and this would be an easy way to make money. And it may be, but now you might take that thing that was, just plateauing, and that might crash because it doesn't have you and it needs you. And now what are you going to do for the people who in my book, you already owed them a safe and work environment, a stable work environment, and you failed to provide that. So you have to be critical of yourself. A lot of people, especially when you're the boss, it's hard to have critiques. And I was really honest with this consulting client, and I said, like, my best service to you is going to be getting the truth from you, the truth from me, as much as, a lot of people are going to say, yeah, sounds like a good idea. I'm here to hold you accountable. And I just said, like I said before, you're paying a lot of money to get me to help you keep this boat afloat. And now you're like, I want to build another boat, and we're still mid voyage. Like, that's not fair. You have to focus. And he agreed with me. And if you're watching, kudos to you. That's great ego control, because I know how hard it is to turn down those ideas, especially when they're really appealing. But if you've already committed to a business and you're already neck deep in it, give it your ultimate focus. Think about what more you can do with this business. If it feels like something that you just can't do anything with, then maybe you need to close that business so you can focus 110% on the next thing. The next thing might be the better route for you. I don't know. You're the only one who can make that decision and decide whether or not that's a risk that you're going to be taking. But what I can tell you is we aren't infallible. We aren't indestructible. We don't have endless time. We don't have endless resources. We don't have endless bandwidth. There are limitations that we have. And especially with a business, as a founder, you have to be so deep into it. You have to be living and breathing and eating and sleeping and fully immersed in it, because all the creativity and ideas, until you get to a large level where you have some other creative brains that you're able to pull in, maybe a GM or a business development specialist or something, until that happens, you're it. So you are the hub of everything that needs to happen. Now, you might not necessarily have to be the one who does it. You might hire a marketing company, but you're the one who should be thinking, really, are you getting the most out of them? Are the ideas that they're proposing really the best for what you want to do with your brand? That's your baby. You cannot, like, businesses feel very often like children. I mean, you don't want to starve one to start feeding the other, right? And it's very hard with businesses, especially if they're not completely overlapping. There are some situations where, like, let's say I've got a commercial kitchen, I'm already producing food, and I wanted to start making baby food. That seems easy, right? I've already got the vegetables coming in the kitchen. All I have to do is blend them up, and boom, I've got organic baby food. Yeah. Now you throw that on your meal prep menu. You might sell a few. Not too many people have babies, and they only have babies, their babies only babies for a certain amount of time. So that means that concept would, and this is another one that we explored, you'd have to be constantly finding more customers because the babies would be outgrowing the baby food. So just to keep that alive, it's an endless chase. And if you're going to make it as just an item on your menu, that's one thing. But if you want to make that its own brand, now we're talking another website, another marketing effort, another marketing budget, lots of creatives that have to be made, lots of research that has to be done, social media that has to be made and kept up with, and all these exhausting things that most of us aren't doing 100% with our existing business. Most of us feel like there's another platform that we're neglecting, or there's more posts that we could be doing, or higher quality posts, or more engagement, or whatever. There's always something more we could be doing with the existing project. So imagine now having 2 projects with that obligation, or 3 or 4. And I've seen a lot of people spread themselves too thin just because they're chasing that dollar that seems a little bit easier. If that dollar is that much easier for you to get, like I said before, consider selling, bringing on a partner to run, doing something else where that business won't be neglected, that business won't go into a downward spiral because of the lack of attention that it's getting. And unless you can do that, I would strongly suggest you table any other ideas until you're able to get to a point where, like I said, there's not a dependency. And as I had said before, be critical. Look at what is already bringing in money. Focus on that first. Again, I'm not going to go into some of the particulars about today's conversation, but it was a tough conversation to have because you never want to be critical of anybody, especially when it's a good idea. And I even said, if you didn't already have a meal prep company and all these employees and all these obligations and everything, and you were just saying, hey, I've got 50 grand and a bunch of time on my hands, what should I do? And you had that idea, I'd say go for it. But considering that there isn't an abundance of resources, as I said before, time, attention, and everything else, there's a finite amount of that. You've got to make sure that where you're spending it is going towards a maximum potential, not spread out. It's not like buying a bunch of different lotto tickets. Oh, I'm going to buy the Fantasy 5. I'm going to get some cash for life. I'm going to get the Powerball. It's not like that. This is requiring bandwidth. If you look up my name on the state registry for LLCs, forget DBA or forget domains. I bought a bunch of domains, but I've actually registered probably over 20 companies. Some of them materialized into being actual companies that had bank accounts and clients and cash flow and all sorts of other stuff. But I would say at least a quarter of those LLCs were nothing other than another step, another level of commitment beyond the domain that I purchased, based on just having an idea that I thought was clever, something I could definitely execute. Every single one of them was something I could execute had it not been for the fact that I was already committed to pre-existing projects that in reality I had an obligation to follow through and focus on. So that's all I wanted to say. I really don't want to scare you guys away from any opportunities, but I want you to be very critical, because like I said before, it's hard to find critiques. Our employees, it's very difficult to get them to critique you. You're the boss. You're the one who pays their checks. The people around you, some of them might be overcritical, and the ones who are overcritical, you might not be able to listen to their opinion anymore because that they're just going to be critical no matter what. They're an employee for life. They don't understand, the risk reward relationship. They don't understand the entrepreneurial ventures, and you might not, listen to those critics. So you have to often be the best critic. And the good news is, once you learn to be your own critic, you'll have that built-in critic for life. You don't want to be too critical. It's a fine balance, but you have to go through and say, okay, what is the real cost of this? Aside from money, what is the real cost? How much time is this really going to take me? What stuff have I gone through before? What stuff seemed like it would be done in a week and actually took 6 months? I'm sure there's a lot of instances where things cost more than what you anticipated. More time, more energy, more resources, more money. And you want to make sure that if you're going to be committing to another project, that you're not going to be shooting yourself in the foot and spreading yourself too thin. So hopefully you guys find that beneficial and took something away from that. And like I said, not trying to scare you away, not trying to waste any more of your time. We're coming up on a half hour. I say that's good. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you guys are looking for any resources. I always forget which side that's on. We got the resources over here. I invite you to jump into the private group, and I hope you guys are able to find some focus in what you're doing, and it's okay to set things aside. It's okay to let some opportunities go. It's all right. There's plenty of money out there. Just because you didn't make it setting up a gym next to your meal prep company when the space became available doesn't mean that you're going to go broke. It's okay.